Do you know that you are making genetic changes right now? Do you know that every time you forge a new connection neurologically in your brain, that somehow the DNA inside that nerve cell has to be signaled, and the moment it's signaled, in a matter of milliseconds, it grows a new branch and it reaches out and makes a connection? That's a genetic change. So then you would have to agree with me then, if you're not learning anything new or having any new experiences, for the most part, you're staying the same. Yes? And that the research with neuroplasticity says that your brain physically changes from every new thought you embrace, every new choice you make, every new experience you have, every new behavior you demonstrate, every new emotion that you can cultivate. There are chemical and physical changes that take place in your brain, which means you are changing your mind. So when you change your brain, you change your mind. And when you change your mind, you change your brain. How many people understand? So then if you begin to learn information and you wired it in your brain, and then you keep revisiting that information, you start installing the neurological hardware, yes? If you keep revisiting it and keep reviewing it and keep firing and keep wiring, the hardware program becomes a software program. Now it becomes an automatic software program because you practiced it enough times, it becomes automatic. And we call those neurological networks. And neurological networks are just gangs of neurons that have fired and wired together to form a community of neurosynaptic connections. And now, if you keep revisiting it, it becomes an automatic program. So you have a neural network to brush your teeth, to put on makeup, to talk a language, to complain, to drive your car. It just becomes an automatic program. So the research shows that if you take a group of people who've never played the piano before, and you have them learn one-handed scales and chords, and you do a functional brain scan on their brain before the activity, and then you do a functional brain scan on their brain after the activity, if they come for 2 hours a day for 5 days, and they practice those scales and chords over and over again, at the end of 5 days, when you scan their brain, there are physical changes in their brain. They've grown new networks of neurons. Then once you begin to get some instruction, you get your body involved, and when you get your body involved, you have a new experience, and experience enriches the brain. More neurons begin to connect because experience is more sensory input. If you pay attention to what you're doing, you have to pay attention, and if you keep repeating it over and over again, the neurons begin to fire and wire, and you create a cluster of neurons to reflect your external activity. In other words, when you're truly focused and you're truly paying attention, the brain does not know the difference between what's going on out there and what's going on in here. And the brain literally believes that the thought is the experience, and without lifting a finger, it looks like they have been playing the piano for 5 days. In other words, it looks like the experience has already happened. As you begin to change your internal state and you begin to give thanks before the experience happens, and you marry a clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you can sustain that for an extended period of time, you're knocking on the receptor site outside of the cell. And the longer you can live in that state, the more you're signaling the gene, and sooner or later that gene turns on and it makes a new protein. And the protein is an expression of life. An expression of life is the expression of health. And all of a sudden, by thought alone, you change the health of your body, or your body begins to know what abundance is. It knows it because it becomes automatic. It becomes second nature. Genes create disease. Remember that? And then they said, oh, we made a mistake. That's actually not true. It's the environment that signals the gene that creates the disease. Well, how come two factory workers can work side by side, both exposed to the same carcinogenic chemical, and one gets cancer and the other doesn't? Certainly there's some internal environment that's greater than the external environment, and that internal environment is still the external environment of the cell. So then when you change your state of being, I want you to understand, and there's research to show this, that in one meditation you regulate new genes. You control your destiny. That because of the new science of neuroplasticity, it says then you're not hardwired to be a certain way for the rest of your life. And because of the concept of of epigenetics, you're not doomed by your genes to be a certain way for the rest of your life. Your genes are your starting point in life. And you get to select and instruct different genes because they are a library of potential, a parts list of possibility. How many people are with me? So then when you're in the midst of change and you're crossing the river of change, you have to go from the old self to the new self. And the moment you are no longer putting your attention or investing your energy in the old self, that when you overcome yourself to the smallest measure, where you no longer believe in that thought as if it's true, you are now no longer reinforcing the circuits that have been firing and wiring together, and you begin to settle down the old self. And people who cross the river of change face their doubt, face their fear. They face their limitations. They face their emotions. They face their habituations. And they understand then that in order to go from the old self to the new self, there's a void that they have to cross. And once they understand that they are stepping into the unknown and it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, it's unpredictable, and they can begin to realize that when they are there, it's a good idea to create a new state of being right there, because if they're creating a new state of being, they're biologically, neurologically, chemically, endocrinologically reinforcing and genetically a new self. Now, when you react to something in your life, you turn on a primitive nervous system called your fight or flight nervous system. The fight or flight nervous system, the moment you perceive a threat in your external environment, the neocortex associates the image in the external world with the image imprinted in the brain, and it sends a signal to the limbic brain that sends an electrochemical signal down the spinal cord and turns on the adrenal glands. The moment the adrenal glands are turned on, they begin to squirt out a certain amount of adrenaline. The moment the adrenaline is released in the body, there's a physiological change. The pupils dilate, the salivary juices shut down. It's not the time to eat a steak. Your heart rate increases, your respiratory rate increases, and blood is sent to your extremities. And now you're prepared to either fight or run. And that is for the optimal chances of survival. And this system is very adaptive when there's a threat in your external environment. You could think things equal to how you feel, and as you begin to think those certain thoughts, you turn on the stress response just by thought alone, because that thought is where you're putting your attention. And all of a sudden you activate the amygdala. The amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus makes a blend of neuropeptides that signals the pituitary, and all of a sudden now you're sending chemical information. You get a rush of energy now, and your body goes through the same physiological response just by thought alone. And so then when you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, and you become addicted to those thoughts because they carry a high emotional quotient, then sooner or later you keep knocking your body out of balance just by thought alone, and that imbalance becomes the new balance, and now a person is headed for disease because of chemicals of stress push the genetic buttons that create disease. So our thoughts literally can make us sick. It happens in moments to seconds to hours. This one is called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. This is the release of cortisol, and cortisol lasts for hours to days. One is short-term, the other is long-term. Cortisol is the anti-inflammation, anti-pain chemical. If you're getting chased by a lion, or you're battling with a tribe of angry tribesmen, the cortisol helps you to reduce the amount of pain in your body, so if you're fighting or you're running, you can do it for an extended period of time. But cortisol, in the long term, begins to break the immune system down, because the chemicals are very, very toxic to the immune system, because all of your energy is going for your external environment, and there's no energy for growth and repair. We live in two states of mind. The first state of mind is called survival. That's the animal part of us. Living in survival is living in stress. If you take your attention for a period of time, you as the quantum observer, off the problems in your life, off your pain in your body, off your past and your emotions, wouldn't you agree then, you as the quantum observer, if you could become nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, no time, to surrender as a thought impossibility? wouldn't you agree then, you as the quantum observer are causing patterns of information called particles to turn back into possibility? How many people are with me? And so then the moment you keep revisiting your life from the same level of mind, you keep freezing reality into the same patterns. You get the idea? So then you can't create a future as a victim or insecure or hopeful or worried, because that's the past. To emulate the divine is to be divine, is to be expanded, it's to be unlimited, it's to be invincible. And when it comes time to command matter this afternoon and you move into a new state of being, you better be big. And you better feel invincible, and the hair on the back of your neck has to stand up because you are commanding destiny. You're the observer. And the moment you take your attention off your known life and you put it on your future, and your brain doesn't know the difference, you're causing infinite patterns of information to collapse into new particles called a quantum event or an experience in your life. And people have done it over and over again. You have two memory systems in your brain. Okay, good. So the first type of memories are called declarative memories. Now, you ready for this? Declarative memories are just memories that you can declare. Is that easy? And declarative memories are also called explicit memories, and they're the seat of your conscious awareness. Now, you have two types of declarative memories. The first one is called knowledge, facts, information that you learn. And we call that semantics. And that's stored in your thinking neocortex, your thinking brain, the philosopher, the theologian, the analytical mind. You with me? So you read the book on how to build a doghouse. You read a book on how to be wealthy. You read a book on how to lead. You read a book on how to be a more patient parent. And all that information is stored in your philosophical, analytical, theoretical, intellectual neocortex. So then, the second type of declarative memory is through experience, through the events in your life. They're called episodic memories. And that's stored in your thinking and feeling brain, your neocortex, and your limbic brain. Now, this is the autobiographical self. If I've learned these things and I experience these things, I can declare them. When you restrain your behaviors that keep you doing the same thing and you start doing something new, when you have the experience and the check shows up in the mail, all of a sudden you feel wealthy. You feel successful, or you lead in some way and you get your behaviors to match your intentions and actions equal to your thoughts and your mind and body and working together. All of a sudden you feel like a leader or a patient parent. And so the emotional quotient then teaches the body to understand what the mind is intellectually understood. So knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body, and in that moment you are embodying knowledge. You got it? And you are signaling new genes in new ways. So then, it's not enough to do it once, though. You have to be able to repeat the experience over and over again. And if you keep doing it over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, all of a sudden it becomes non-declarative. Now, you know what non-declarative means? You've done it so many times, you don't even know how to declare it. You don't even know how you do it. It's subconscious, it's automatic, it's implicit, it's who you are. So you can't consciously even describe how you do it because it's a skill now. It's a habit. It's a behavior. It's an emotional reaction. You've conditioned your body to be the mind. And this is when you activate the third brain called the cerebellum, the seat of the subconscious. Now, 95% of who you are exists in this non-declarative system. So then you learn a bit of knowledge. That's called philosophy. You apply that knowledge. You initiate it. You do something about it, you have a new experience, and then you move into a state of being if you can repeat the experience. And that's my definition of enlightenment, by the way. Knowing that you know. And this is when it's innate in you, or you can be a wealthy, abundant person because it's part of your state of being, because you've experienced it enough times. Now, if you become so possessed by that experience internally that the thought becomes the experience, what's the end product of an experience? An emotion. So the moment it becomes an emotion, now you activate the second brain called the feeling brain. And if how you think and how you feel creates a state of being, your body is being conditioned emotionally to a new mind ahead of the actual event. You with me? If you can revisit the experience over and over again, and you're thinking and feeling differently, you keep practicing it, The body becomes the mind, or the mind and body merge as one, or you memorize a neurochemical state, and now you are in a state of being. And you just went from thinking to being without doing anything. And when you're in that state of being and you get up, you're more prone to do things and think things from that state of being. So you have two laws of the brain. The first law of the brain is called the law of association. The law of association says you're going to use what's stored in your brain to learn new information. You're going to use what's already wired in your brain to wire new information in your brain. You're going to use knowns to understand unknowns. Now, the second law of the brain is called the law of repetition. And if you keep repeating something over and over again, 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 there comes a moment where the neurons release this chemical, this miracle grow, this fertilizer that causes them to stick together and then develop more enriched connections. Let's revisit neuroplasticity. It's to fire a series of many diverse networks of neurons in different combinations, sequences, orders, and patterns to produce a new level of mind, and to be able to repeat that same frame of mind at will and make it look natural and easy. So then, the more you revisit it, the more you begin to seal the deal. Now, your frontal lobe is your creative center. That is where you create from. It allows you 40% of the entire brain to have free will, to have where you learn. It's where you have intention. It's where you invent possibilities. It's where you pay attention. It's where you speculate. It's where you decide. It's where you begin to control your behavior. It's when you focus and concentrate. It's when you restrain yourself from emotional reactions. It's the boss. It's the CEO. It's the symphony leader. It is the seat of your conscience. And that's what allows you to observe who you're being so you can change and modify to produce a new outcome. Learn from your mistakes. So now, if you then begin to think about what a greater way to be is, and you begin to ask yourself, what is compassion, or what is greatness, or what is unlimited mind? The moment you begin to ask that frontal lobe question, your frontal lobe only has a certain amount of resources, and it's all stored in your brain from the things you learn or you experience. You with me? So you say, what is compassion? And you go, oh, I read the book on compassion. That was pretty good. And you activate those networks of neurons. Oh, my Aunt Mary was really compassionate with me. I remember that. Oh, yeah, I saw the video with the Dalai Lama on compassion. Ooh, I had that experience where I felt compassionate. Boy, do I have a lot of compassion for myself. And as you select these different networks of neurons, it creates a level of mind. Once they fire in tandem, you get an internal representation, and that's called an intention, a clear picture in your mind. So you would have to agree then, the more knowledge and experience you store in your brain, the more you can build a greater intention or a greater future.